Broadcasting from deep behind enemy lines in the occupied territory of the Socialist Republic of California. Your host, former California State Assemblyman and Governor candidate, Tim Donnelly.
Hey, welcome back to another edition of the Radio Free California Network, Tim Donnelly Show. And yes, I am your host, Tim Donnelly, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in the state of California. With an action-packed show today, we've got actress Morgan Brittany coming up, along with Politichick editor and senior founder Anne Marie Morel and others. And we're talking about the most important story, of course, the French attacks and the ongoing crisis in Europe, ISIS crisis, if you want to be specific. And the president's reaction is probably something he regrets. He literally said this, you will not believe this, but President Obama was giving a speech. He was in Turkey. He was denigrating who he considers the real enemies, the Republican Party. And he said, apparently, they, meaning the Republicans, are scared of widows and orphans coming into the United States of America. At first, they were too scared of the press being too tough on them in the debates. Now they're scared of 3-year-old orphans. That doesn't seem so tough to me. Several hours after Obama opened his mouth, a female terrorist wearing a suicide vest has blown herself up, killed a police dog, and another jihadi was killed by a grenade during a 6-hour siege on a flat where police believe the Paris massacres were masterminded and 6 other ISIS terrorists were hiding. Bottom line, I said it before, I'll say it again. ISIS is Obama's legacy. He could talk all day long about this legacy of inclusion, this legacy of foreign policy victories. Well, the bottom line is, you want foreign policy? Paris is your legacy, Obama. ISIS is your legacy. And bottom line, this president walked out of the battle against ISIS. He walked American troops out of the war, off the battleground, and created a vacuum that empowered this evil force that is growing every day. They're fueled by petrodollars. So, and by the way, what did Obama do to the oil industry in America? Made it harder and harder and harder for you to actually make a profit and create jobs. It has consistently pushed to end fracking, which is one of the only job creators in this country. I don't know if you know this, but in the state of Texas, during Obama's reign, Texas has created more jobs than the entire country combined. And they have done it through oil and gas exploration. You take a look over into the lowest unemployment state, which is North Dakota. They have been fracking their way to prosperity, fracking the Bakken Shale. You've got states, old Rust Belt states like Pennsylvania that and others that are fracking and creating jobs and wealth. But more importantly, they're creating energy independence so that we're not dependent on the Middle East. We're not dependent on those who are allies of ISIS, those who are enemies of this country. We're not dependent on them for our energy source. And we don't fuel their jihad with our dollars. But of course, you would never hear the president talk that way. That's why this election may be the most important in your lifetime. I know you've probably heard that a million times. But I can make the case. It's very simple. We are either going to stand as a nation, we are going to defend the United States, its citizens, and Western civilization from this onslaught. And the onslaught, just for those of you who think I'm talking about warmongering, I'm not. I'm not suggesting that we go everywhere and put troops on the ground. I'm saying we need to understand the nature of this battle, and we need to engage as only Americans can. And that means we need to start talking about it. That's the most important thing. We need a president who will actually identify evil, who will call them by name. They are Islamic terrorists. They are Islamic extremists. They are Islamic jihadists. They are Islamic militants. Yes, I'm saying the word Islamic over and over again because we need to turn the word Islamic jihadist into the same derogatory term that Republican is right now in the minds of Americans. And until we do that, until we get our president and our leaders united and standing up against the enemy of freedom, the enemy of civilization, the Islamic Jihad is literally the enemy of Western civilization. It's that simple. And if you want to know what Western civilization is, look around you. It means you get to live in peace. You get to choose however you choose to live. It means nobody's going to throw you off the roof of a building if you're a homosexual. It means that if you're a woman, you have all the same rights as every other citizen as a human being. It means that humans have human rights, period. Under Sharia law, under the Islamic code, under militant Muslim rule, you have no rights. Women have no rights. Homosexuals are persecuted and killed. Anybody who is not on board with the agenda of the Islamic jihadists, too bad. You are considered the target of the jihad, and your extermination is something that is rewarded. There is no negotiating. You can't love these people out of their hatred. You cannot reason with these people because reason has no place in their world. It's all about zealotry. Hey, we will be right back with actress Morgan Brittany after this short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the show. We're talking ISIS. We're talking about what is actually Barack Obama's true legacy, which is ISIS is Obama's legacy. Paris is his only foreign policy accomplishment, and it is a disaster, but it is waking up the rest of the world. We're going to the Radio Free California Newsmaker line. We're going to bring on good friend of the Tim Donnelly Show, actress Morgan Brittany. She is one of the Politichicks founders and a columnist at townhall.com, but she's a household name if you watched any film or television in the last 30 years. Morgan, welcome to the show.
Hey, good to see you. Good to hear from you again this morning.
It is. You know, we had a great time last night at a friend's house, and we were talking. You were telling stories, and someday I hope you're going to write a book on all the stories you know from Hollywood. I'm not going to get into any of it here because you need to put it down in writing, and some of it you can't tell until people have passed from this earth.
Yeah. It's been a pretty interesting ride over the past 50 some odd years, let me tell you.
Well, it has, and I'm sure you have seen a lot of things in your time on this earth. Certainly, you grew up in a very different time politically in America, and look at what's going on now. If you think back to the wars that we have fought in the past, where America came together as one, where Republicans and Democrats put aside their differences to stand up to defend freedom, and now we have a president who literally is on the front pages today making fun of Republicans, saying, you guys are afraid of widows and orphans, and next thing you know, a female suicide bomber blows herself up. Thankfully, she didn't take any of the police with her, the French police. She did kill a French police dog named Diesel, but it just goes to show you how ludicrous this is. This attitude that Obama has is virulently anti-American.
Oh yeah. I mean, he is just doubling down in these last few months that he has in office. He is just doubling down, and he is in the face of conservatives and patriots and Republicans. He is in their face doing everything he possibly can to do the opposite of what is right for this country. When I heard him say, our president the other day in that press conference, that, America can't be winning, can't be seen as winning. What is that? That is our American president basically saying that America's not supposed to win at anything? I never in my lifetime would think I would ever hear that from an American president. And I haven't heard too many people talk about that.
See, he is an apologist for our enemies. He is literally, I mean, if we were dealing with Hitler and Nazi Germany, and you had the president of the United States saying we can't be seen winning at anything, you would have a president impeached in the middle of a war. But the Islamic jihadists, who are very Nazi-like in their attitudes, which is, hey, if you're not of our religion, if you're not of our exclusive little club, and you don't feel as zealously as we do about Islam and the spread of Islam and murdering the infidel, then we have a right to murder you. If you're not ideologically pure enough, similar to what the Nazis were doing based on race. And how can you not call out that kind of evil? It makes no sense at all, unless, and we had a caller yesterday who suggested, and I'm sure many have suggested this before, but one of the precepts of Islam is called taqiyya, where you are allowed to lie. You have a license to lie about who you are. So if President Obama were taking a page, and I'm not saying he is, I'm just saying, think about it. If he were taking a page from that playbook, he could pretend to be a Christian. He could pretend to be anything but a Muslim, but his actions are squarely defending Islam and Muslims around the world against Western civilization, against American interests.
Oh, absolutely. You hit it right on the head. I mean, that is exactly the way they will tell you to your face exactly what you want to hear, but yet they don't believe it, and yet they justify it because this is the way that they're going to succeed. This is the way that, look what he's doing with these refugees. Anybody in their right mind would say, this is crazy. We cannot allow this to happen. I mean, we don't know who these people are. And like you just said in your opening, you were talking about how a woman blew herself up with a suicide vest. What about these children? Okay, great. Children are going to come in. Children are going to grow up. I have news for you. And I don't think he's seen any of the newspaper reports, any of the photographs from all around the world of 6-year-old little boys holding heads up of people that they've cut their heads off. Really? These people are not dangerous? I beg to differ.
Yeah, and since when did it become America's responsibility to care for the byproduct of our enemies? When you have ISIS rolling through Syria and through all these Middle Eastern countries and murdering Christians, I get that we would take Christians. But when you look at the statistics, 97.5% of the refugees that we've gotten from Syria since 2012 are Muslim. To almost 2,100 are Muslim. A mere 2.5%, 53 individuals are Syrian Christians. And the Syrian Christians were definitely much harder targets than any Muslims anywhere in the Middle East. And how we tolerate a president who literally can't understand the nature, or refuses to understand intentionally, the nature of the evil that we are faced with. This is not a war that America sought. This is a war that was brought to our shores on 9/11, and Americans woke up, but our politicians have decided to go back to sleep because they don't want to be called Islamophobic.
Oh, exactly. Listen, he knows exactly what he's doing. He knows exactly. It's not, this has all been planned. He came out of nowhere, Tim. If you remember back, nobody knew who Barack Obama was. He was a state senator that nobody even knew anything about. And he emerged out of nowhere with backers that came, and wanted him in office. Do you ever ask yourself the question why? And every single thing he has done, he was put in that position to undermine this country, to take this country down, because nobody does that. Nobody comes out of nowhere like that. And all of the people that surrounded him, the Bill Ayers and the Reverend Wrights and all of that stuff, if you were paying attention, you had a question in your mind that went, wait a minute, who is this guy? This I think has been going on for many, many years. And I'm telling you, I don't know what we're going to do. We better get a leader really fast that's going to get us out of this, because if not, we're done. I mean, we're done. This is ridiculous.
Well, and I would posit that we still don't know who Barack Obama truly is. There's virtually no records of him anywhere. It's hard to trace. There have been movies made about him and tremendous speculation. And I agree with you. He is a Trojan horse for the Islamic jihadists and for a completely separate agenda that has nothing to do with the best interests of America. That is absolutely certain. Hey, if you're just tuning in, we're talking with acclaimed actress Morgan Brittany of Politichicks. She's a columnist at townhall.com, and she's just an extraordinary American. We will be right back with more after this break. Hey, you are tuned to the Tim Donnelly Show, and I, of course, am Tim Donnelly, your host, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in the state of California. We're talking with actress Morgan Brittany. You may know her of Dallas fame, but she's been in a whole lot more. It seems like every major film or television series, Morgan Brittany was there, even as a little girl. I was fascinated last night to hear some of the things that you were in, and like Gunsmoke and really cool things like that. You also traveled with the Bob Hope tour. Now, did you ever go into any of the war zones and entertain the troops? Were you ever part of that?
No, I wasn't a part of that one. I did the Bob Hope specials. Like, we went to the South Pacific, and we went to places like that, and it was really wonderful, because I got to sing with Howard Keel and John Denver, and Jonathan Winters was with us, and I've got some great stories about that. In fact, I've got behind the scenes footage of us, and it's really, really great memories that I have, and I was so lucky to be able to work with such amazing people over my lifetime. I look at the directors and producers, like Hitchcock and Mervyn LeRoy, and working with Lucille Ball and Henry Fonda, and dancing with Gene Kelly in Las Vegas.
Oh, my word.
I mean,
wow.
It's really, I've been so blessed and so fortunate to have had such a long career, but boy, I'll tell you, it's, career doesn't mean anything if you don't have freedom and you don't have a country. And that's why I'm speaking out now at, the demise of my career, because I really can't work in Hollywood anymore.
Oh, yeah. No, you are you are definitely persona non grata, but you don't care.
Yeah.
That's what I love about you. You're such a great American, because you literally made choices to initially put your craft and your integrity first, and now your country called and needed a voice, and you have risen up. You've never backed down. You write some great columns at townhall.com. You're a big part and partner in Politichicks.com, which spreads all kinds of amazing stories and op-eds from all over the country. One thing that we discussed last night that I thought was fascinating, because I didn't even know it. I'm a huge Jimmy Stewart fan just from his movies, right? As I think a lot of Americans just feel, as soon as they hear his voice, it's very iconic and very American. And I had no idea that he had gone off to war and been a general and literally commanded troops and then came back to being an actor. I mean, we never have that anymore.
No. I mean, I know there was one guy, what was he, a football player who went over, gave up his career?
Pat Tillman.
Yeah, right. And there's been a few, but you really don't see people sacrificing. The culture has changed so much, and the whole idea of being a patriot and fighting for your country and fighting for freedom has just diminished over the years. And I see such a great divide between, our young people who are in the military and willing to sacrifice, and the slap in the face that Obama said in that speech the other day to those vets who are saying, I go to Walter Reed and I see these poor guys in there. Give me a break. These guys are heroes. They are patriots. They signed up for that job and they want to defend this country. Don't pity me. All of these military guys are saying, don't say that. We want to fight for this country. This country is worth dying for, and we knew that when we signed up. How dare he say things like that? Yes, we don't want to see our military maimed or damaged in any way. It's a horrible thing. But I give credit to these guys because they come home and they are willing to go back on the battlefield. They don't care. They're willing to go back. You talk to any of them. It is amazing to me. This is a breed of people that we're losing. We're losing a lot of our young people that go to these liberal universities. I mean, you can see. Look what's happening all over the place with these crazy elitist, spoiled brat liberals. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And then you look at our military. What a difference! We got to straighten. This country's got to straighten its act up.
Well, you've got chronic crybabies on campus holding cry-ins. Meanwhile, you've got real American heroes who have been damaged and sacrificed and wounded or given their lives for this country, and they don't complain. Not
one bit. You hear these little narcissistic liberals on campus that had their feelings hurt because somebody said something that offended them. Give me a break. You know what? ISIS comes over here and cuts your head off. That's going to offend you.
That might hurt.
Yeah, it might.
That might hurt.
Yeah.
That might be some real pain.
Man. My blood just boils when I hear this kind of stuff. It's like shake these people and say, snap out of it. I mean, I'm sorry, but don't be a wuss.
Well, and look, I think the biggest insult to our brave men and women who put themselves willingly in harm's way to defend freedom, the greatest insult is a president who refuses to identify the nature of evil they're facing, who literally is undermining all the work they did on the battlefield by pulling the troops out and micromanaging the war effort, and then now literally bringing potential terrorists disguised as refugees into this country, putting at risk the very families and communities that our service members were fighting to protect.
That's right. That's exactly right. I mean, it's madness. If you think about it, only an insane person would do this. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. You got to look at it like this is the craziest thing I've ever heard. We're not only getting the Syrian refugees. I read an article this morning. We're getting the Cuban refugees that are escaping from Cuba and coming over here by the thousands. This country is not going to be the country that we know, we're not going to recognize it. I barely recognize it now. It's just insane. And these people are not like the people of old who assimilated and became Americans and waved the American flag. I have ancestors from Europe as well. But believe me, they spoke English. They started businesses. They love this country. They fought for this country. This is not the same group of people we've got coming in now. These people don't assimilate. They raise their flag. They bring their cultures to our shores. They do not want to become American, but yet they want to take everything from America. Education, healthcare, welfare, everything.
We are literally watching the erasure of the greatest culture on the face of the earth in terms of freedom. We had a caller on a couple weeks ago who said that America invented freedom. Now, I know that's not completely true, but to other countries where people are oppressed, that's the way that they view it. And this shining light on the hill is being extinguished by the very people who have been charged and entrusted to protect it and keep it burning.
Oh, I know. And I look at people who have come into this country the right way. They've come into this country legally. Those are the people who love America. They kiss the ground when they get here. Why don't we have more of those people and we let them in? But no, we put up roadblocks and they have to wait years and years and years in order to get through. But the people who really don't want to assimilate and don't want to become Americans, we just open the door. Let them in. No problem. We don't know who you are, but come on in.
Hey, if you're just tuning in, we're talking with actress Morgan Brittany. She's been in almost every major film and television series, at least when I was growing up, and I was a huge fan. Hey, can you stay over with us for one more segment?
Oh, sure. I'm just ranting and raving today.
Well, we love talking. We love your ranting and raving. We love talking with you. And by the way, when are you going to come out with a new column at townhall.com? I'm getting jitters. I need my fix.
I just sent you over one 10 minutes before the show, but that was from WorldNet Daily.
Oh, my word.
I just sent it over to you, and it's all about the refugees, and it came out today. So
we'll talk about that when we come back. Stay tuned. Hey, welcome back to the show. We are joined here by Tim Donnelly show favorite, actress Morgan Brittany. I don't think you understand how big of a fan I was when I was a kid watching on Dallas. You played the evil stepsister, and you were very convincing, which means you're a great actress because in real life you are the complete opposite. But thanks for spending a couple minutes with us here today on the Tim Donnelly Show. And you have a new article, an op-ed up at WorldNet Daily, which we will have up shortly at timdonnellyshow.com so people can read it and then connect with you and make sure that they're able to follow your future pieces. But you have nailed it in terms of what is going on with this crisis. And I would posit that you would agree with me. ISIS is going to be Obama's legacy, whether he likes it or not.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it will be. I mean, and is that what he wants? It seems like it is. Seems like that's what he wants, because he's certainly not going after them aggressively. He's not. And that's a big question for the American people to say why. Why is he not going after them aggressively? Why are there only, American bombings, 5 bombings a day? Whoopee. That's going to do a lot. I mean, if he really wanted to go after him, he'd go after him.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're Americans. When we decide we want to do something, and we have the greatest military in the world, and we don't have to do everything the conventional way. long before we defeated communism and won the Cold War, we did a lot of what we did was subterfuge. A lot of it was behind the scenes. It was influencing and winning the hearts and minds and crippling the stranglehold that the communists had on the minds of the people that they held captive. But also, we went in and we assassinated evil leaders. And we could be doing the same thing right now with ISIS. But Obama doesn't want to engage ISIS. He's made it clear that he wants to be hands-off because he doesn't want to be called a warmonger.
Well, I think there's something even deeper than that. And I've been looking into it over the past few days. I think I'm going to write about it on Politichicks. I think that he has he's sort of in bed with Iran. And Iran doesn't really want to get rid of ISIS. They want to create chaos in that region. And they don't really want, how the Sunnis and the Shias are fighting each other. I think they want to create chaos like that. And I believe Obama is on Iran's side. Look what he's done. He's lifted the sanctions on them. They're getting all of this money that Iran is getting from the United States. Where do you think that's going to go? That's going to go to arm terrorists because that's what they do. That's going to enrich their uranium. They're going to get a bomb quicker. I mean, what is going on deeper down? I think that there is some kind of an alliance, and Barack Obama and Iran are in this together. And I don't think they want to do anything with ISIS right now. And I heard the other day, and I think this came from the State Department, somebody slipped and said that Assad in Syria is buying oil from ISIS. I mean, what is that? Really? What is going on?
And you've got the supposed allies of the United States in the Middle East. They won't take any of these refugees, but they want to help them infiltrate the West and Western civilization. That I agree with you. Obama's obsession with Iran it's a psychosis.
There's something there that we don't know about, because this whole agreement that he pushed through and all of this craziness where, they're going to get a bomb. We know that. But what about look at our other Middle Eastern allies that he has just he's destroyed the relationship we had with these Middle Eastern countries that had been built up over the years. And you notice that those Middle Eastern countries, they don't want the Arab Emirates, they don't want to take any of these refugees. They're going, we don't want them. And that's really the people from their region. But they're saying, no, we don't know who these people are. We don't want them.
Well, I've come to the same conclusion you have, that and it's taken me a while to get here, but I actually believe now that Barack Obama wants Iran to get a nuclear weapon because he wants to hurt and destroy, and as he, in his own words, air quotes here, he wants to fundamentally transform America. Well, how better to do it than shift the balance of power between the savages that run Iran, who have sworn death to America and death to the infidels in their religious zealotry to wipe out anyone who doesn't believe the way they do. But this would be a blow against Western civilization. And that is his biggest chip on his shoulder and his biggest gripe with the world.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Well, we gotta end it there, unfortunately. Actress Morgan Brittany, thanks for joining us here today at the Tim Donnelly Show.
My pleasure.
Always enjoy having you. We'll be right back after this short break. Hey, if you are just tuning in, you have found your way to the Radio Free California Network. I am Tim Donnelly, your host, former California State Assemblyman, and radio governor here in California. We are going to go straight back to the Radio Free California Network newsmaker lines and bring on another friend of the show, political consultant, PR guru, Art Haney, who is coming back from the dead. He's had the flu, but he's agreed to join us today. Art, welcome to the show.
Hi, Tim. How are you today?
I am doing great. I hope you're feeling a little better than you were the other day.
Yeah, apparently the flu shot didn't work out like I hoped it would.
Don't get me started on forced vaccinations. Hey, we are talking about.
I wondered whether I should bring that up or not.
Yeah. I bet you did. Hey, you and I had an interesting conversation because you sent me a text, and it was so cryptic. Friends of yours were actually members of the band that were taken hostage. You didn't know if they were alive or dead at the time that you had texted me. Thankfully, they survived. And tell us a little bit about what they went through.
Well, yeah, it was funny. The reason I texted you, I sent notes to you, a couple other friends in the media world, and friends of mine at Homeland Security and the FBI. Because, I don't know, I guess it was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and all of a sudden my phone starts going crazy, and I was in the middle of, I was doing some kind of work, and it was all friends, so I thought, it's, Friday afternoon, everybody's getting out and about and just calling to say hi, but they started doing the whole turbo calling, where they'd call again, and I thought, well, that's weird. So I finally finished whatever it was I was doing, and I picked up one of them, and they're like, oh, my God, did you hear about the guys? And I'm like, huh, what? And then another one said, turn on the news. And I had sort of seen flashes by on my computer screen about the attack in Paris, and then saw one, it was about a concert, and then saw another who the band was, who happened to be close friends of mine, which is why my phone started to go off. And So we all started to get on the phone to each other to try and figure out, okay, has anybody heard from them? Is everyone safe? What's going on? And that was when it got really scary, because we had confirmation that 2 of them were okay, but 2 and some crew members were unaccounted for. And so I started reaching out to everyone I knew in the news media and, like I said, in law enforcement and counterterrorism, trying to figure out if they'd heard anything.
Wow.
Thinking maybe, you saw some news ticker somewhere, which is why I wound up texting you. And turned out I started getting calls from the news media because I knew way more than all the news did. I even knew more than law enforcement knew at the time.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It was
information.
Terrifying.
Yeah, information breaks so quickly in our society with cell phones and email and the ability to send a picture or an image or a video. And your friends are members of the Eagles of Death metal band, correct? Yeah, and it's a California-based.
The full name of the band is Eagles of Death Metal. It's a joke. It's a tongue-in-cheek joke. They have nothing to do with death metal at all.
Oh, okay. All right, Eagles of Death Metal.
It's a gag. It started when they were in a bar, and somebody walked in one day and said, I want to hear some death metal, and he played Bon Jovi. And the 2 of them, the 2 who formed the band, looked at each other and were like, death metal? That's like the Eagles of Death Metal. And they looked at each other and like, hey, that's funny. And that became the name of the band.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So they were performing in this concert. And tell us what you've been able to piece together since as to what happened.
I don't know if any of your listeners or if you have seen the video of them playing on stage when the shots break out. My friend Dave, he's the easiest one to spot because he's got a really long beard. We call him Rock and Roll Santa Claus now. And he's the sweetest guy in the entire world. In fact, our whole little network has this joke called Friends of Dave. His name's Dave Catching. And all of us who have met each other through Dave, love each other to death because everybody's like really kind and thoughtful, just like Dave is. And so he's kind of like the patron saint of the group because he sort of introduced everybody.
How
And
did you get it? How
any
did
of
you
us
get
that
into
ever
a
met
group like
were
that?
friends of his. By sheer accident. I actually met them. It was actually another very funny story. How I actually met the band was I was shooting a Pepsi commercial in Moscow. And yeah, I know that's a whole nother long story in and of itself. And a former girlfriend had turned me on to the band, and she only knew of them simply because she was walking by a record store and saw the album artwork and thought it was the funniest thing she'd ever saw. So she bought the album, and then she turned me on to them. She's like, "You got to hear this. Besides liking the music, they're really funny, and they're very smart and very irreverent, which is why even their name has sort of gone over the heads of most of the media, because at first glance it sounds like there's some doom and gloom kind of thing, which couldn't be the furthest thing from the truth. In fact, Jesse, the singer, is an ordained minister. And so is Dave. In fact, Dave, there was a time when Dave was actually going to marry me and my wife.
Wow.
So they're super nice guys. And Jesse's also a former president of the Coachella Valley NRA.
Nice,
and was
nice.
a
We like that.
speechwriter for Sonny. Yeah, oh yeah, he's a big Second Amendment guy. And was also the speechwriter for Sonny Bono when he was mayor of Palm Springs. So, yeah, your audience members would like Jesse quite a bit. Really, really intelligent guy. But how I met them was I had flown back one morning from literally directly from Moscow. And that girlfriend I told you about who had introduced me to the band had never seen them live before. And I was like, I've got to take her to see them because she'll love them. I mean, their albums are funny, but when you see them live, they're even funnier. They're really infectious. So I had her pick me up from the airport. We went straight to, they were doing a warm-up show before a new tour out at Casino Morongo at the Key Club there. And so we went straight from LAX, saw the show. And I have this sort of habit of when I have to shoot outdoors a lot, I'll wear a cowboy hat, keep the sun off me, and I also like cowboy hats. And I got a family from Texas. It kind of runs in our blood. So I had worn the hat at the show because I can't pack it in my bags because it gets squashed.
Right.
And so that night, about 3 o'clock in the morning, jet lag kicks in 3 or 4 in the morning, and I can't sleep. So I decided I'm going to go downstairs, and so her and I get up and we get in the elevator, and Jesse, the singer, gets in the elevator. And he's like, "Do I know you?" And I'm like, "No, I don't think so." And he goes, "Oh, you were at the show last night." And I guess he recognized the hat, and I said, "Yeah, I was." He's like, "So did you come far from the show? For the show, did you come from like LA or something like that?" And I sort of started laughing. I was like, "You have no idea how far I just came."
Yeah, you just came from Moscow.
Yeah. And so I told him, and he's like, "Wait a minute, you came all the way from Moscow to see the band?" And I was like, "Yeah, and I explained to him why, and that I wanted her to see him live. And he was like, "Well, what were you doing in Moscow?" And I said, "I was shooting a Pepsi commercial." And he's like, "Oh my God." He goes, "I wrote this one song specifically to sell to a soft drink company." Like I said, he's a really, really intelligent guy, and he does a lot of stuff that he knows will be commercially viable. Besides just doing stuff for fun. And so he, in fact, a lot of their songs are using, Nike commercials and, on and on and on. There's a whole list of them. You hear them in movies and TV bumpers and commercials all the time.
Hold that thought right there. We're talking with Art Haney, whose friends were band members that were taken hostage by the ISIS terrorists in France. We'll continue the story when we come back. Hey, if you're just tuning in to the Radio Free California Network, where have you been? It's about time that you got here, but you're just in time to hear Art Haney, who is a political consultant, PR guru, and very good friends of the band members who were taken hostage in the Paris ISIS terrorist attacks. Fortunately, they survived. We're going through the story. Their band is called Eagles of Death Metal. They are the Eagles of Death Metal, which I get now. All right, so you were in the elevator with Jesse, the lead singer, meeting him in Palm Springs area at the Morongo Casino. And tell us how that friendship blossomed, and then you got to finish the story. We want to know what happened to him.
So Jesse's like, oh my God, I didn't realize you were in sort of the, ad world. And so he gave me his number, and, I walked away thinking, wow, that was a really weird experience. And, because it's probably the first time I'd ever worked with a band that I actually liked. Usually you get hired to do stuff and, you're doing it for a paycheck. It turned out I was friends with these guys first before I ever worked with them. And we became, better friends. But as time went on with the beard and the video. And so I've done, a handful of things with him, satellite bands. It's, it's a fairly close-knit community out there in the high desert. And so, geez, we've been friends now for 10 plus years at least. And so when this whole thing went down, some other friends of mine in other bands in New Orleans and New York were all on the phone with each other trying to get information from whoever we could. And, some people would get a hold of crew members that were there who would talk to, whoever. And we had heard, at this point, we've heard, and this is maybe an hour or two into it, long before the news media ever got a hold of it, that Jesse and their drummer, Julian, had escaped out the back door fairly quickly. But Dave, and you can see Dave in the video on stage, and it brings me to tears every time I watch it because, like I said, he's one of the sweetest people I've ever met in my entire life, literally. And I'm not saying that just for effect because of the news cycle, but I adore Dave. Like I said, Dave was supposed to marry my wife and I, and he wound up still being at my wedding. And when the shots ring out, you see him sort of get startled, and he freezes, and you can sort of see in everybody's eyes in sort of blurry video, or at least in their body language, how frightening that was. And I can't begin to imagine what those guys have gone through. And what started to unfold in our little network was that Jesse and Julian were okay and they were safe, but nobody knew where Dave or Matt, the bass player, was. And we'd already heard that their merchandise guy was shot and killed. Oh. We'd also heard that their tour manager was shot. So, but we couldn't confirm that really with anybody other than, sort of each other. And, I'm sure everybody's played that game in grade school where you sit around in a circle and, you whisper something in somebody's ear, and by the time it comes out the other end, it's a completely different story. And so, I had a huge fear of that. So I didn't want to tell anybody or really talk to the media other than what I could confirm. And so, and I was trying to confirm,
How long was it that you guys had to wait before you were able to get any news?
Well, we never actually got confirmation from Dave specifically until like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Wow. A handful of us all got emails, because we're calling him and emailing him and everything else we can think of to get a hold of him. It didn't even dawn on to me, he was probably, either, running out the back and all of the stuff was left in the facility, or, been taken out by the police, or, or God forbid, killed. And he probably didn't have a cell phone with him. So we couldn't find anything out. And we had heard from the bass player who's normally with them is actually suffering sadly from stomach cancer and is at home getting treatment. So hope you're feeling better, Brian, if you're out there listening. And so I had talked to him, and he said that he had heard from management that all 4 members were okay. But I couldn't get a hold of him again because I'm sure everybody was calling him as well. And nobody knew who actually had spoken to quote unquote management and who management was. And nobody still had, eyes on Dave or Matt. But we kept hearing over and over, merchandise manager was killed and tour manager was shot and in the hospital. So anyway, fast forward to, middle of the night when we finally hear from Dave directly. and he said he was okay and, couldn't really talk. And it was by email. And even still, I've got, 3 or 4 emails from him, but, they're all really short because I'm sure he's having to answer 1 trillion people that are trying to contact him. Not to mention he's got to deal with law enforcement and debriefing and all of that. So apparently what happened was, like we heard several days later, that the merchandise guy was killed. However, it wasn't the guy we thought it was. It was, they picked up an entire new English crew when they started their European tour, which totally makes sense. It hadn't even occurred to me. And I've never met the guy, although I hear he was liked by all. He was just one of those guys. And, he was out, towards the front of the venue selling, merchandise. So he was exposed. And sadly, I had also heard, and I was hoping this wasn't true, that his girlfriend was there, who was from New Orleans. And he was killed right in front of her, and she was shot as well. And so she basically, had the luxury of getting to watch him die thanks to those. I guess I can't say the words I want to call ISIS right now on the radio, but so she's still in the hospital. He passed away, sadly, in the massacre. He passed away. He was murdered by those scumbags.
And how did Dave get out? What was we got about a minute left.
Well, apparently he hid in a closet and was hostage for about an hour before police came and killed the attackers and got everybody out. And then he was basically sequestered with the band for, the next several days, being debriefed.
Wow.
So that's kind of the whole story.
That is quite a story, Art Haney. Thanks for coming on with us in spite of your being under the weather to tell us, and we're grateful that your friends are okay, and our thoughts and prayers are with them.
Thank you. And if I can ever get a hold of Jesse, I'll get him on the show. I know you guys will love him.
All right. Hey, we will be right back. We're going to have Anne-Marie Morell, Politichicks.com, coming up. There's a reason that we are dwelling on the ISIS attacks in France, because this gives you a glimpse. It gives you a foreshadowing of what is to come. This battle between the 14th century, between savages and civilization. This is a full-blown assault, as we've discussed with actress Morgan Brittany earlier. You just heard the harrowing story from my friend Art Haney, who is good friends of the band, the Eagles of Metal Death, which now I get. It was a play on words. It's a bunch of guys that sound like terrific human beings. They're hilarious. They've got a great sense of humor, very intelligent. Here they are performing in Paris, and their new merchandise manager is murdered along with his girlfriend, watching her boyfriend die before her eyes. I mean, these are the people that Obama can't call by name. He can't just speak the truth. And there's more. There's a lot more. This morning in Paris, the French police stormed an apartment, a flat, as it's called over there in Europe, of the suspected masterminds behind this attack. And a female jihadist blew herself up, not hours after President Obama made a fool of himself by minimizing and insulting Americans who have deep concerns. There's a tremendous number of Americans who just don't want terrorists to be imported into this country. We don't want terrorists. We don't want terrorist cousins. We don't want anyone right now from Syria who might be sympathetic to ISIS and their mission. It makes zero sense. Nowhere on the planet Earth would we ever invite people to come here and put our communities at risk, undo the work that our brave men and women have fought to secure and defend freedom and the free world from these evil, I'm not even going to call them people. It's just an evil force. And there's no reasoning with this force. There's no, you're dealing with people who are sociopathic, who are psychotic, who literally will tell you one thing to your face. They've been empowered and given a license to lie and become chameleons and blend in. And somehow we're supposed to trust that this will all be okay, that we can believe in those who are out there to sort out all these so-called refugees, and that they will just know, these federal officials, these bureaucrats will just know. We're supposed to have faith. We have a president who makes fun of Americans who are concerned about this, who are concerned about the fact that all it takes is one. All it takes is one of these people who have dedicated their lives to killing others. And next thing you know, you've killed hundreds or thousands of Americans, all so that Obama isn't called an Islamophobe. Well, he might not be called an Islamophobe, but he is an idiot. And for him to insult Americans, insult the intelligence of Americans, when the bodies haven't even been buried in France, claiming that somehow widows and orphans are no threat to America, you know what? Every single descendant of ISIS, every single individual who swears allegiance to Islam, who does not condemn jihad and condemn evil and condemn the portions of the Quran that allow this evil to take place, I'm sorry, I consider them my enemy. I consider them suspect. I am going to take precautions first, ask questions later. And I think that should be our policy as a country, to preserve and protect and defend Americans and the American way of life, and not be used cynically by those who would try to shame anyone who speaks the truth into telling the politically correct lies. Islam is not a religion of peace. That is a lie. You've been told that over and over and over again. Islam is a religion of war. Yes, I said it. If you want to call me an Islamophobe, I really don't care. I've been called a lot worse things. And I stick to what I know, and I stick to the truth, because that's the only thing that's going to set us free. It's the only thing that's going to turn this around. We have got to educate and inform the citizens of this country, because we're going to be the front lines. In places like California, we got Jerry Brown. He, on the one hand, wants to take away your guns, wants to limit how many bullets you can have in your guns. He's already signed that bill. And on the other hand, he says, oh, I fully trust the government, and we can bring in as many Syrian refugees as you want. They will be vigorously vetted, and everything's going to be just splendid. Well, I'm sorry, Jerry. I don't trust you. You are a corrupt, worthless leftist politician. You're a hypocrite. You have squashed oil exploration in California, which empowers ISIS with those petrodollars that are actually being sent to them by Californians, instead of us developing, exploiting, and exploring and fracking our way to prosperity and energy independence so that we are not funding our enemies. You use the agency that is supposed to actually explore and help aid the exploration and exploitation of our natural resources. You just use that for personal gain. You send them to your property. You got your report in 24 hours. You allow others who are not your political friends to suffer in the wilderness for years, waiting for you to do the right thing, and you never do it. So, Jerry Brown, I don't trust you. And so when you say you trust Obama, I don't trust you. I don't trust Obama. I don't trust any politician. I don't trust any bureaucrat at this point to be able to protect us, to be able to do what the Constitution tells them to do, keep us free from an invasion, when we have Obama being the greatest apologist and the greatest appeaser of militant Islam, of Islamic jihadists. Obama is appeasing them. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what we need to understand. This is exactly the same as Chamberlain appeasing Hitler and the Sitzkrieg that followed, when those who could have done something sat idly by and allowed their neighbor to be invaded, allowed hundreds of thousands of people to be marched off to death camps. It was Einstein who said that the greatest evil in the world is not the evil that men do, but the fact, and I'm paraphrasing here, but the fact that nobody does anything to stop it. And so that now falls to the American citizen at large, to you. We always talk about on this show, our mission is to inform, educate, and engage. It is time to engage. And look, first, we need to educate ourselves as to what Islam is. Second, we need to pay very close attention to what our politicians and leaders are saying and doing. And third, we need to oppose anything that puts us at further risk, that invites more Muslims to come into this country, while Muslims are the only ones who are attacking and killing and maiming and slaughtering people because they don't agree with their religion. The Islamic Jihad movement, they are the Nazis of our time. Islamic jihadists are Nazis. The only difference is, instead of being pure ethnically, you have to be pure ideologically in order to survive. Otherwise, they will literally kill you and end you. And I can't state that any more clear than that. So either you're with us or you're with the Nazis. That's the way that I put it, and that's the way we need to put it to our politicians. Second thing, and I've said it over and over again, and I'll say it again, you need to go to Turner's today. You need to get in line, buy a gun, learn how to use it, because you never know if you're going to be on the front line in a concert or at some public venue when ISIS strikes here in the United States. And I'm telling you, NSA, with all their spying on you and I, and the FBI and Department of Homeland Security, who won't secure our borders, who allows ISIS to penetrate them along with all the illegal gardeners and everyone else, they're not going to stop anyone. They have illustrated and demonstrated incompetence, so it's going to fall to you. The question is, are you ready? Are you willing to step up and be an American? Only you can answer that question, but we will be right back. Welcome back to the Radio Free California Network. I am your host, Tim Donnelly, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in the state of California. We're going to welcome back to the show longtime friend, CEO and editor-in-chief of Politichicks.com, and you know her name, Anne Marie Morell. She needs no further introduction. Anne Marie, welcome to the show.
Well, you didn't say how talented and beautiful I am, so I don't know about this.
Well, I think my wife
Totally
is
kidding.
listening, so of course, I know your husband is a big fan of the show, so I'm trying to keep us both out of trouble. But look, you are all of those things and more, and you're also a great host. I was privileged to spend some time with you and some friends, and we had a very interesting discussion last night about an America that bears no resemblance to the America where our president can't even identify and name the evil that ISIS represents. He cannot use the term Islamic. It's as if he is compelled by some other force or has an allegiance elsewhere. And many suspect that he may be a Muslim and that he may actually be trying to protect the mission of Islam instead of protecting the people of this country.
Yeah. Well, and on one tiny part of your point just now, I disagree with. He does know how to call out what he believes evil to be, and that would be people like you, Tim Donnelly, and me, and anyone.
How could I forget?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. He has no problem calling all of us enemies. They're Christians. We're the problem. Global warming is the problem. Everything is the problem other than the actual problem. And that's the problem.
White police officers are the problem. Anytime there's an altercation between a white police officer and a black youth, Barack Obama is the very first to shoot his mouth off, to pop off, as he would say it. But he doesn't want anyone to pop off about the nature of Islam and what their true agenda is. But a lot of people all over the world, there's a poll out today that a vast majority of Americans don't want any resettlement of any Syrians here for any reason. They want it ended.
Yeah.
And you've got 29 governors, and this is a bipartisan thing. 28 are Republican, 1 is a Democrat. But I think there's a lot of Democrats out there that are upset with their so-called representatives who are not speaking for them, because I don't know anyone who wants to die at the hands of ISIS because Barack Obama didn't want to be called an Islamophobe.
Right. And unlike people like Madonna, who are trying to say, well, if we just love them more, they're going to love us back. That is insane. That is the definition of insanity. Trying to say that like an Islamic terrorist is going to welcome Madonna with open arms because she loves them. No, she'll be one of the first killed. Even Mother Jones. I don't know if you saw the article out today from Mother Jones, the epitome of leftist publications. They're even saying liberals need to stop trying to welcome Syrians with open arms. This is insanity. So, yeah, even some of the leftists are finally starting to understand. Yeah.
But I don't know why it's taken them so long. I mean, Islam in and of itself is anti-homosexual. It is anti-woman. It is anti-freedom. It is pro everything that they claim to stand against. And I don't get why the left has become the greatest defenders of, if you want to call Christians bitter clingers, Islam, when it's truly lived out the way it is laid out in the Quran, is all about subjugating and forcing into submission everyone, whether they like it or not.
Well, I highly recommend everyone read Dr. Jamie Glazov's book, and it's called United in Hate, because it really does paint a clear picture. Jamie's been studying leftists forever. He's totalitarianism and communism and every kind of ism. He has studied it thoroughly. His book, United in Hate, really clearly explains why those two seemingly unrelated factions can actually agree. They agree on one thing: their hatred for us. All of them hate us. And they almost hate us as much. Yeah.
And that was laid out this morning. There's a video up. I saw it at Drudge Reported, but it's going all over the web. A soccer tournament in Turkey.
Yeah. Turkey.
They called for a moment of silence, and the fans began to boo the moment of silence. Then they began to chant Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. We have a clip of it. It's not very clear. Let's play a little bit of it and see if you can pick up any of it. Well, we'll have to get that clip queued up here in a minute or two. But can you believe people would do that?
Okay. Of course. You're talking about Turkey. You're talking about Islamists who are. This is the problem that a lot of people on the left don't get, and a lot of people on our side that are, we're supposed to be Christians, we're supposed to be helping these quote unquote refugees. The problem is
we are talking with Anne Marie Morell. I got to cut you off there. We'll come right back and finish that point here on the Tim Donnelly Show. We are talking with Anne Marie Julie Morell, CEO, editor-in-chief, Politichicks.com. And that's not all that she is. She is a beautiful, amazing, and extremely intelligent, patriotic American, a great American. Also, you were an actress at one time, if I'm not mistaken, or do you prefer to be called an actor?
Well, actress. I'm a girl, so yeah, actress.
Oh, no. I don't know if you know this. There's a huge debate. Actor is considered to be sort of, what's the word? Not ambidextrous, but androgynous. It's
ambiguous. Oh,
yeah,
brother, what is wrong with people?
Yes. Well, it's the correct term because you are an actor. It doesn't indicate male or female. At any rate, but you were an actor on a number of television series, and you were on Sledgehammer, which was one of my dad's favorite shows, by the way.
Yep. Yeah. And every single person on that show, all of them were big time leftists. But at the time, I was a Democrat too. So, yeah. Even Sledge, even right wing crazy gun loving Sledge, he was one of them too.
Wow. So what changed your mind? Because you told me you found your voter guide from back sometime back. Must have been the 90s. You voted for Clinton. You voted for Feinstein and others.
Yeah.
What changed?
Well, pretty much anyone with a D. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was not for me. It was 9/11. Of course, I wrote about it extensively in my book, What Women Really Want, with Dr. Gina Loudon and Morgan Brittany. 9/11 for me was my big awakening moment where I realized that as long as we have as evil exists in the world, there's not going to be peace on earth, goodwill toward men. If we lay down every weapon that ever was, someone would pick up a rock and kill with that. It doesn't matter about guns and knives and nuclear bombs. It's evil. Evil will always exist in the world. And once that was clear to me, all the rainbows and unicorns and fairies disappeared and reality set in. And then I realized, wow, we've got a battle on our hands and I'm not going to fight it with, two fingers in the air like peace.
That's interesting. You almost make it sound like being a member of and a supporter of and a voter for the Democrat Party is sort of a psychosis, if you will, that you eventually were cured of.
Yes, it's like a cult or Scientology or something where you really have to kind of escape with your life, or you can die thinking that Islam and things like that are manageable.
I think
that summarizes it. Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to see, and we are seeing right now, a similar awakening to what we saw after 9/11. Maybe not as extreme here in the U.S., but certainly across Europe. This is the clarion call for Europe.
Mm-hmm. Well, unless you think the way John Kerry does when he said that Charlie Hebdo, at least Charlie Hebdo was something that they had a reason to attack during the Charlie Hebdo attacks in Paris. This is more spontaneous. This wasn't expected. I mean, that's the way they really think, that drawing a cartoon warrants mass murder. But this, what happened in Paris, we didn't expect that. No, that's what they do. Islamic terrorists kill. They are trying to conquer and gain territory. That's what their God told them to do. Their prophet told them to do that long time ago, 1,400 years ago.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that John Kerry is the Secretary of State for the United States. You've got men and women in harm's way still fighting, still defending this country against this evil force. And he actually says that he can understand the Charlie Hebdo attack because it was sort of legitimate. And then he says, no, not legitimate. He realizes he really screwed up. and then says, well, there's sort of a rationale for it, as if somehow killing in the name of religion is okay. These are the same people that call Christians bitter clingers if they cling to their Bible and their guns too much.
Right. Well, Tim, I mean, this is their MO. And think about Hillary after Benghazi. They have to have something to blame Islamic terrorism on. That's why they tried so hard to make everyone believe that it was that Benghazi was a result of the video. They were doing the same thing that John Kerry's trying to do now. Well, that was because Americans created a video that made them mad. Oh, that's because Charlie Hebdo, that they were drawing cartoons of Muhammad. That's why. No, it's the reason they are attacking and killing once again. It is because of the Hadiths. It's because of the Quran. It's because of Muhammad's words. It's because of Sharia. That's they do. It's what they were told to do. It's part of what they believe is their religion.
Yeah, and it has already happened. It's already happened here. We saw it in Texas, in Garland, Texas, when Pamela Geller and her organization held a Draw Muhammad contest. It was a free speech event. It was designed to illustrate the importance of the First Amendment. And she was smart enough to have gotten security, good security, former or off-duty cops. And here you've got jihadists who go on Twitter and say, hey, we're going to go kill some infidels in Texas. And the NSA doesn't pick up on it. None of the organizations that are spying on us were able to figure it out, which to me is inexplicable and inexcusable. If your job all day is to look for hashtags and ferret out Islamic jihadists, you'd think that you would actually find people before they do this when they're trumpeting it on Facebook and Twitter. But the bottom line is that cop literally exercising the Second Amendment smoked those jihadists, killed them on the spot with 2 well-placed shots, and they weren't able to kill anybody. And one thing I'm advocating is everyone needs to understand and begin to exercise their Second Amendment right, because you never know where you're going to need it. And you need to be carrying at this point in our history, because our government cannot and will not protect you.
Right. Yeah. And I think we should maybe start thinking about it like the old Westerns, Gunsmoke and everything. You had people that wore their guns on their hips where the bad guys saw them, and they were afraid to attack cities that were well armed. Of course, if they had a town that didn't have a sheriff, in every single Western that you can think of, that town gets overrun by bad guys. And you got to have the good guys to come in and protect. You're exactly right. We're at a place in our lives where we're seeing the people that are supposed to, the only job of the President of the United States, the main job, is to protect American citizens from forces outside the borders as well as within. And the fact that they are not doing that, he's doing the opposite. He's releasing 5 Gitmo terrorists once again, and just overriding everything that American security is supposed to be based on.
Yeah.
It's very frightening. We're living in a strange, frightening time.
Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution states that the federal government shall keep each state free from invasion and guarantee a Republican form of government. Well, if you allow an invasion, and we've already seen that they've allowed an illegal invasion of our country by those who are not authorized to be here, and among them certainly are terrorists. We know are terrorists that have snuck in, who are now sleeper cells just waiting to be activated at the right time. We know that ISIS is planning some kind of an assault, and they're the question is, what are we as Americans going to do? Because the lesson of France, which is clear to me, is you're on the front line now. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're within the sound of my voice, you are in America, you are in California, and you are the front lines in this war on terror. We're talking with Anne-Marie Morell, CEO, founder, Politichicks.com. We'll be right back with more of the conversation. There's a story out today in the Daily Mail. I don't know why it is that foreign press is always willing to tell the truth more so than the American media. But America's enemies within, nearly 70 have already been arrested over ISIS plots just in the last 18 months alone, including a number of refugees who had been given safe haven. But then all of a sudden they turned to terror. Surprise, surprise, making an even stronger case for every state to not accept a single additional Syrian refugee. And now the number of governors has grown from 29 to 34. We're talking with Anne-Marie Morel, who is a familiar name to you if you're a listener of this show for any period of time. She is my good friend, as well as the CEO, editor-in-chief of Politichicks.com. And she is the author of, one of the authors, the three Politichicks together wrote an amazing book, What Women Really Want, which make a great Christmas present. You should go on Amazon.com and find it, or actually go to Politichicks.com. There's a link there, and you can buy it and give it to your friends. And it contains Anne-Marie's story of her conversion from being a Democrat. I was going to put a pejorative in there, but I decided not to. I would never call you ditzy, so I will not say that. But it does go nicely with Democrat, you have to admit.
It does, and it's kind of pretty accurate, actually.
So, ditzy Democrat, no longer. Anne-Marie Morel had a conversion after 9/11, and I think a lot of Americans right now are watching what's happening. I mean, we started to allude to it earlier. There was a soccer match. Here you have a moment of silence. During a moment of silence, everybody shows respect, regardless of your feelings. So it was sort of the perfect moment to tell the Madonnas and those who think like her, if these people will not respect a moment of silence for the dead, and these are not so-called Islamic jihadists, these are just normal Muslims in a Muslim nation in Turkey, which contains 99% Muslim. And if they're not willing to honor that moment of silence, then do you think you're going to be able to love them into liking you or respecting you or not killing you? I don't think so.
See, this is the problem, Tim, with Syria, with taking in refugees from Syria, because Syria is also predominantly a Muslim nation. And the civil war they're fighting, it's not a war, Christians and Jews against Islamic terrorists. This is Islamists versus Islamists. They're fighting over different factions and different ways that they want to implement Islam, but they're not fighting to stop this, worldwide massacre that Islamist jihadists are trying to do. That's not what they're fighting against. They're fighting against, one side killing the other side, or vice versa. They're kind of, whoever goes there, including John McCain or anyone who goes to that country and says, oh no, this group over here is better than this group over here. That could be fine. There could be little tiny things that are better or worse than the other. But for the majority, the so-called rebels, put them outside of Syria, you put them in America, they're fighting us. They are in Syria, the good ones and the bad ones, whatever you want to call them, in Syria. They're not fighting to stop hating us. That's the thing. That's the common denominator. So bring them here in a country that they despise is like putting acid in salad dressing. It doesn't go together. You don't do it.
It is cultural and political suicide, and could result in will result, I believe, in time, in more deaths of innocent Americans in this war on Western civilization. Hey, I want to play a little bit of this clip. It's hard to hear, but let's play a little bit of this moment of silence so you can hear the reaction of these so-called peaceful Muslims who gathered to watch a soccer game. And this is what they thought of the moment of silence for the 129 killed in the terrorist attacks in France. That doesn't resemble anything like a moment of silence that I have ever heard at any sporting event or any public event ever in the history of the world. They are shouting and chanting Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. They were booing in the beginning, even though it's not, it's hard to pick it all up, but that's what happened. So all the people out there who are claiming that Islam is this religion of peace. We had Daniel Greenfield on yesterday, who, by the way, is a writer for Politichicks.com, who destroyed that notion. The entire purpose of this religion is to subjugate and force into submission those that it wishes to control, which is everyone.
Yes. And the problem, Senator Ted Cruz just got into a little bit of hot water because he was saying if there was a way to test the Syrian refugees, quote unquote, to find out what religion they are they Muslims, are they Jews, are they Christians? There's not any way to test anything. There's not any way to find out. You can't vet people who have no papers, no passports, no documents. You can't do background checks on these people. I would love to save some of the Christians that are being slaughtered throughout the Middle East by Muslims in the Middle East, but we can't do that either. It's the same thing.
Well,
they can use tequila. They can fake it. They can lie. They're allowed to lie.
Tequila is the license to lie. It is a license to lie about anything in order to get your business done, which in the Islam faith is to subjugate and wipe out and kill that. But even if you convert to Islam, if you're not crazy enough and you're not willing to go kill people in the name of Islam, then you may not survive your own conversion. But this is what you have the American president, who I don't believe is an American president, defending.
Yeah.
Anne-Marie Morell, Politichicks.com. Can you stay with us for another segment?
Sure. Yes, I can.
Okay. We'll be right back after this message. This is the Radio Free California Network. I am Tim Donnelly, your host, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in the state of California. I'm joined by my good friend Anne-Marie Morell of Politichicks.com. She is an author, an activist, and an all-around great American. And I forgot to mention an actor or actress. You choose. Anne-Marie, welcome back to the show. I was talking earlier today with a good friend of both of us, Art Haney, who's his friends were actually in the band Eagles of Death Metal, who were two of whom were taken hostage, and whose whereabouts and fate was unknown for many, many long hours. Unfortunately, they had just brought on a new merchandise manager who was murdered at the front gate of the venue. I mean, you're talking about people who will go into a concert where people are enjoying music and having fun together and harming no one, and just wholesale slaughter. And we're having a discussion in the United States of America about whether or not we're being Islamophobic or whether or not we're acting appropriately in defense of not only American citizens, but literally the entire concept of freedom and Western civilization.
Well, the problem, Islamists are notoriously cowardly. They are complete cowards. They only attack the weak, whether it's women, whether it's children, whether it's whatever you want to call any kind of weakness emboldens them. But they're emboldened. They're emboldened by being in France. France has bent over backwards to give them everything they want. They have no respect for that. They're not appreciative of that. They think that France is weak, which it probably was. This is the third time Paris has been attacked. I'm concerned that we're going to see something happen to America very soon, probably toward the end of Obama's presidency. We saw it at the end of Carter's presidency, 4 years of one of the most weak presidents in American history. We saw it after 8 years of Clinton playing footsies with interns and playing footsies with Iraq weapons inspectors for years, when he was just kind of laughing off everything that was happening nationally or worldwide. So, and then 9 months after him came 9/11, and it was after 8 years of weakened America. I'm really worried that after 8 years of Obama, that we're going to see the same thing. We need strength, and that's why I really encourage whoever's out there listening, please, please, please think of who you would feel safest, national security-wise, as a president, because you don't want a Clinton, because we saw what happened with Benghazi. That would be a repeat continuously, always trying to duck and dive away from the reality of Islam.
It's funny. We did a poll yesterday on who our listeners would trust to be the best to handle the ISIS crisis. And it was an interesting result, because every other poll we've done, Donald Trump comes out head and shoulders ahead of everyone else. In this case, it was Senator Ted Cruz was the overwhelming favorite with over 80% of the votes. And Donald Trump got a few, and so did Rand Paul, but that was it.
Well, Ted Cruz has been for years in the Senate as a politician in Washington. He's been one of the few. Rudy Gohmert is one. Michelle Bachmann was one. Very few congressmen and or senators are willing to really stick their neck out, literally, to defy Islam, to really call it out. And he's one of the few that does that. I've been impressed with Governor Huckabee, actually. He's also unafraid to call Islam what it is. When Gina Morgan and I were on his show, back before he ran for president, of course, we were talking openly and very bluntly about Islam. And he and Sean Hannity were the only two, actually, at the time that were daring to say anything, calling out the reality of Islam. And it's Tim, the problem. It always comes back to people that talk about, there's so many non-terrorist Muslims. Well, as long as they're donating part of their money, and they have to, they are told by their Quran, you have to donate, kind of, well, like with Christians, we donate part of we tithe. They're supposed to tithe, but their money is going to mosques. And unfortunately, many of the mosques, and I would say probably most of the really large mosques in America, have been infiltrated. That money is funneled into terrorism. Even if some of the mosques are innocent, they don't necessarily know where that money's going. They're funding terrorism when it's going back to the Middle East. So they've got to start denouncing it. And Frank Gaffney told me once, I asked him, I said, can we just go bomb, just to blanket bomb all over the Middle East and just kill them? And he said, no, this isn't something that you can just bomb in one place. ISIS could be, it's been called Al-Qaeda, it's been Taliban, it can be called Hamas. There's so many different names that this thing goes by, as long as they follow Sharia law and follow the words of the Hadith and all of the surahs that tell them to kill us. That is the problem. And no one wants to confront that. And that's unfortunate.
And that right there gets at the heart of the matter. This is not something we can just cut the head off. There are so many heads, and they are everywhere, and they're growing. And look, I believe that if you really study your enemy, and if you really study history, the Islamic jihadists are planners and plotters, and they have intentionally gone out and changed the public dialogue so that nobody is allowed to actually speak the truth about them. without being demonized and criticized. That's why, as you stated, so few politicians are willing to even state it. I remember when I made one comment about Sharia law in my race for governor, it exploded the media, and I became the subject of a tremendous amount of attack by the political establishment, all for literally just speaking truth. Nothing I said was untrue. It was absolutely provable and true. But in the end, it's illegitimate for you to even speak it. And they've been very successful at carpet bombing political correctness with CARE and all these other organizations that will attack anyone who is speaking the truth about Islam. And so once they've done that, and then they infiltrate, and they actually have operatives here who are willing to carry out their evil, once again, you'll have a president who calls it workplace violence instead of Islamic terrorism, Islamic jihadists, Islamic militants, Muslim militants, whatever you want to call it. You have to include the motivation and the source of the evil, which is this religion of war that everyone believes and has been brainwashed into believing is a religion of peace.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was the article that Daniel Greenfield wrote for Politichicks that you probably talked to him about. And he said, why Islam is a religion of war. And I encourage anyone and everyone to read that particular article, because he summarizes the problem, the core problem. And again, it goes to the core of their beliefs, their belief system. When you're not attacking people, you're attacking what they truly believe with all their being, and they're willing to die for it. And if you just think about your own life, I mean, there are very few things that I would really die for, but I mean, I would die for my family. I would die for my country if it came to that. But there are very few other things I would die for. I wouldn't die because my next door neighbor isn't a Christian. I wouldn't try to kill my next door neighbor just because he's a different religion. But they do, and that's the problem.
Anne-Marie Morell, Politichicks.com. Thank you for coming on with us today. The article you mentioned by Daniel Greenfield, which is up at Politichicks.com. We have a link to it at timdonnellyshow.com. It is absolutely instructive. And the goal of this show is inform, educate, and engage. And thanks for helping us in that mission today.
Absolutely. Anytime, Tim. Thank you for having me.
You got it. We'll be right back after this. Well, time flies when you're having fun. We are here at the final segment of the Tim Donnelly Show for today. You know, President Obama has suggested that only bigotry would motivate conservatives to shut the door to unvetted Syrian refugees. Hillary Clinton suggested the same. Today, the White House launched a hashtag Refugees Welcome hashtag campaign. At the Brookings Institute, Jeremy Shapiro writes, "We must be careful not to overreact to the Paris attacks." Secretary of State John Kerry says people shouldn't be hysterical about the Syrian Muslim refugee issue. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio explains that our closing our borders to Syrian Muslim refugees would grant terrorists a victory over democracy, as though American democracy depends on importing hundreds of thousands of people who do not share Western democratic values. Bloomberg columnist Margaret Carlson avers that by accepting Muslims, even radical ones, we might westernize our enemies. Hey, guess what? How many Americans have to die so that the left can enjoy its multicultural vision of a world without borders? That's the real question. Obama's so worried about his legacy, he doesn't even see that ISIS is his legacy and will be the way that he is remembered. It was his policies. It was his decision to abruptly pull out and create a vacuum. No plan, no structure, no actual acknowledgement of the danger of ending the war that way. Not that everyone didn't want to end the war. We do. But you don't walk away and abandon all of the hard work and the hard-won successes literally within 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Almost everything that we had conquered went back into the hands of the jihadists. And ISIS came in and filled the vacuum. As a matter of fact, I talked to an emissary from Turkey sometime last year. And we had a very interesting conversation because even though they are a 99% Muslim country, even they acknowledge that by pulling out and by creating the vacuum, ISIS came in and did what Machiavellian figures and forces always do. You're either going to be loved or feared. Well, they chose to be loved by the people who were living in fear and living in deprivation and living with the consequences of war, of endless war. And what did they do? They started providing them food and fuel and the ability to live and exist. And by doing so, they bribed the populace into supporting them. And so now the loyalty of the average citizen in these regions that were taken over by ISIS fell to ISIS. So we may view them as an evil force. We see the evil they're doing, but the majority of the people see them as their protector, as their provider. And you can thank Barack Obama, who everyone laid out as some kind of a foreign policy genius. Yeah, he's about as genius at foreign policy as Jimmy Carter was. Everything he touched turned to dust, was destructive. It was annihilation of our interests. And this will be no different. The only difference is it's coming here to America. This battle right now, 34 governors are on the side of America. That means now we've been joined by 4 more Democrats. You have 5 more Democrats, excuse me. I want to make sure I'm accurate there. But you have a press that is standing with the terrorists. You have a press and you have a president who are defending them, who are apologizing and appeasing. But you have an American public that is waking up. And so it is our goal, as I've stated many times, to inform, educate, and engage. Now's the time. You need to go on TimDonnellyShow.com, read Daniel Greenfield's piece. Go on there, read the piece that we're posting today by actress Morgan Brittany, who was on earlier in the show. And you need to start thinking for yourself and tuning out the politically correct propaganda about Islam being a religion of peace, and understand it is a threat to you in your neighborhood, in your peaceful life here in America, unless you take action. And as I've stated before, you need to turn off the radio, go to Turner's, and buy your first gun if that's what it takes. Go to a range, get some training. It's available all over. We have the right to defend ourselves, and we will be the front lines in this war, because your government cannot and it will not protect you. We have to protect ourselves as Americans. God bless you and Godspeed. Tim Donnelly Show out.